Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Boulay, are you ready to go?
I am ready.
And Ms. Kunkel?
Yes, Judge, ready.
Okay, we are on the record in the Colorado Public Utilities Commission's proceeding number 24G-0084TO. My name is Connor Farley. I am the administrative law judge assigned to this proceeding, and it's approximately 1 p.m. on August 13th, 2024. And this remote pre-hearing conference is being webcast. This remote pre-hearing conference was scheduled in decision number R24-0512-I dated July 17th, 2024. I will take appearances starting with staff.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Jennifer Hayden. With me is co-counsel Justin Cox, Assistant Attorney Generals for the PUC trial staff.
Thank you and welcome. And I'll take an appearance on behalf of the respondent, Sergio Cornejo, doing business as Mns Towing Llc. Is anybody here on behalf of the respondent?
I'm here, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, is that you, Mr. Cornejo?
Yeah, yes, sir, it is.
Okay, great. And I see that there's a Mr. Estrada as well.
Your Honor, Jennifer Hayden on behalf of trial staff. With me today representing PUC staff is Jay Estrada and Lloyd Swint.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Mr. Cornejo, nice to meet you. Welcome. Let me just go over what I hope to achieve today. This should not take long. One is to schedule the case and figure out or confirm what kind of hearing we're going to have. And another is a few questions regarding who the appropriate respondent is here in this Cpan, and whether representation by an attorney is necessary for the respondent. So Ms. Hayden, I'll start with you. I'd like to address that latter question first. So the respondent is Sergio Cornejo, doing business as Mns Towing Llc, which I understand to mean that staff is bringing this personally against Mr. Cornejo and trying to impose personal liability on Mr. Cornejo. Do I understand this correctly?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So one reason why I ask is I took the liberty of looking on the Colorado Secretary of State's website earlier and see that Mns Towing Llc is a duly registered corporation or corporate entity with the Colorado Secretary of State's office. Now, to be sure, it looks to me like Mns Towing Llc, there was a delinquency period that encompasses some of the counts, the dates of the counts in the Cpan, but the delinquency was cured. I'm not sure when, but it was before some of the other counts in the Cpan. So I'm wondering why this is brought against Mr. Cornejo. All of the counts in any event are brought against Mr. Cornejo in his individual capacity and not against Mns Towing Llc.
Your Honor, may I have a moment to consult with my client?
Yes. And if we need to take a break, we can do that.
Your Honor, may we take a brief break?
Yes. How much time do you think you need? You want 5, 10 minutes?
10, please.
Okay. Why don't we go into recess for 10 minutes? It's by my clock, 1:06 p.m. We'll be back on the record at 1:15 p.m. Ms. Hayden, if you need more time at that point, I'll be happy to give it, but let's try to be efficient here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Boulay, are you ready?
Yes, I am, Judge.
Okay, and Ms. Kunkel?
Yes, Judge.
All right, we're back on the record in the Colorado Public Utilities Commission's proceeding number 24G-0084TO. We took a break from Ms. Hayden to confer with her client. What do you have, Ms. Hayden?
Your Honor, in speaking with, in consultation with my client, the heading that the PUC uses is based on the status of the towing operator's permit. And in this case, when they referenced the PUC status, the permit was revoked. The PUC then consults the Secretary of State's website to determine owner operator of the business itself. And in this case, Sergio Cornejo is the sole owner operator of Mns Towing, and that's why PUC staff cited it the way they did.
Okay, so it still leaves open the question, upon whom are you seeking to impose legal liability? Mr. Corneo in his individual capacity or Mns Towing LLC? Or both? Can everybody still hear me? Mr. Corneo? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Hayden.
She
You
froze,
for a
Judge.
moment?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Hayden, it looks like you're having some internet issues. It may help for you to turn off your video and see if that helps.
Am I unfrozen?
Okay, we can hear you now, or I could just hear you. Why don't you go ahead and answer the question that I posed?
Your Honor, staff is proceeding against Sergio Cornejo as the owner and operator of Mns Towing.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, let me thank you for that answer. Mr. Cornejo, do you understand that? You are muted, Mr. Cornejo.
I apologize, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
So I do understand that the PUC is going after just me.
Okay. That has implications for whether you need to be represented by an attorney, Mr. Corneo, and because staff is going after you in your personal capacity, you do not need to be represented by an attorney. If they had been going after or seeking to impose legal liability on the LLC, Mns Towing LLC, it's likely that you would have been required to have an attorney. So I just want to let you know that I'm going to find and conclude that you're permitted to represent your own personal interests before the commission. There's a rule and a statute that applies as to when a corporate entity can be represented by a non-attorney. That doesn't apply here. Let me just tell you, Mr. Cornejo, that decision to allow you, if you choose to represent your own interests, has two consequences. The first one is that you will be bound by and held to the same procedural and evidentiary rules as attorneys. And number two, that you will not be held to a lesser standard because you have chosen to represent your own interests without an attorney. So do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not making any judgment on whether you should hire an attorney or not. That is your decision. But if you choose to go forward without one, those are the two primary consequences. So let me move on then. And address the hearing. I had issued an interim decision asking for some input about whether the parties wanted an in-person hearing in one of the hearing rooms at the commission in Denver, a remote hearing, a fully remote hearing, which would be conducted just as we're conducting this remote hearing today, meaning via Zoom, the Zoom web conferencing platform, or a hybrid type of hearing in which at least, well, myself and at least one attorney and or witness would participate from a hearing room in person in a hearing room at the commission in Denver, Colorado, and anybody else who so chose, witnesses and or attorneys, could participate remotely via the Zoom web conferencing platform that we're using today. The response that I got was from staff, and I understood staff to be asking for a remote hearing, number one, and their second choice would be a hybrid hearing. I understood, Mr. Cornejo, staff said that they had communicated with you by email, and their understanding, and I'm interpreting here, was that you wanted an in-person hearing in one of the hearing rooms in Denver at the commission's offices in Denver. Do I understand that correctly, Mr. Cornejo?
Your Honor, I did want an in-person hearing. I also would like to be represented by an attorney. I have also requested a different investigator to be the one that contacts me, just because Mr. Estrada, I feel like, has been trying to intimidate me a little bit, and some of his emails and the way he communicates with me. I did request a different investigator. If I can please communicate with somebody else until I can get legal assistance. It's kind of hard with the permit being revoked, and this is all I've done for 15 years. You know, to have an income for an attorney. Attorneys tend to be very expensive when they have to go against PUC. I just feel that I would much rather have an attorney, and I will continue to seek legal assistance when it comes to an attorney. And as far as a hearing goes, Your Honor, it doesn't really matter as far as if it's a Zoom hearing or if it's in person. This is a very important matter to me. So I mean, I would be willing to drive up to Denver. That's not a problem. So whatever you guys feel that is best, and obviously if I can get an attorney to represent me with this, because this is the first time I've dealt with anything like this. So it's all new to me.
Okay, understood. I think what I'm going to do then is set the hearing as a hybrid hearing. And so it will be set for a hearing room in Denver at the commission's offices. Ms. Hayden, you and or your witnesses can participate remotely if you so choose. And just one thing I want to assure everybody of is that the ALJs, the administrative law judges at the commission, including myself, have been striving to eliminate any perception that not appearing in person at a hybrid hearing gives an advantage to the party that appears in person. So let me just assure you, there is no preference by the commission. I have no preference. If I understand that there may be a perception out there that parties are treated differently depending on whether they're there in person or not, I am working very hard to ensure that there is no, perceived perception that there's an advantage in any way. So everybody should feel free to participate from where they feel the most comfortable with a hybrid hearing. Ms. Hayden, do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Corneo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule this hearing a little bit further out than I typically do, to give you time to try to find legal representation. So let me just look at my calendar.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, let me ask everybody this. Is everybody available on November 13th for the evidentiary hearing in this proceeding? And I'll start with you, Ms. Hayden.
Yes, Your Honor, November 13th works for staff.
Okay, and Mr. Cornejo, are you available on November 13th? And you're
Yes,
muted.
sir.
There you-
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
all right, so I'm going to set a hybrid hearing for November 13th, 2024. The in-person portion will be in a hearing room at the commission, like I said, and that will be specified in the decision that will come out. Let me just look at one thing. Okay. The other thing I'd like to do is I'm going to order staff to file and serve a witness list identifying the witnesses that staff intends to call and a summary of the testimony of each witness. So that's one thing. And then also file an exhibit list of the exhibits that staff intends to introduce and attempt to introduce into evidence at the hearing, as well as the actual exhibits themselves. So I'm going to set a deadline for that to happen of October 14th. Ms. Hayden, do you see any problems with that?
Is that a holiday for the PUC?
That's a good question.
No, Your Honor, I don't see an issue with that date.
I don't see it as,
Indigenous Peoples' Day? Okay.
yeah, give me just a moment. I'm going to look up. I don't see it on my calendar, but that is not conclusive.
I believe our holiday is the first Monday in October, Judge.
And I think you're right. So, yeah, I don't see October 14th.
Your Honor, staff that's an acceptable date. We can accept that. When it comes to the summary of testimony, a general statement supporting, the facts of issuance of a Cpan would be sufficient. Is that right? Not.
Yeah, you don't have to go into detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, there are a lot of counts here, Ms. Hayden.
Yes, Your Honor.
47. So how long do you think your presentation of evidence is going to take?
Your Honor, generally speaking, we would have no more than 2 witnesses. Predominantly, Mr. Estrada will be testifying that these are towing without a permit violation and records violations, and they occur on different dates. I don't think that, once we get into a pattern of going through each of the violations, that it would take very long. I would guess I don't think the whole presentation of evidence would take more than a day.
Okay. Particularly if it was going to take longer than a day, I would start to consider written testimony to support the Cpan.
I don't think it'll take longer than a day, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Okay, and keep in mind on that date as well, it appears that there is there's a show cause hearing in hearing room B, which is where I would typically schedule this. And those can take up some variable time. It's hard to predict. So let me just look at the calendar again. Hold on one moment. Well, I think or November 13th is the best date, so I'm just going to stick with that. And we're just going to have to focus on, you're going to have to focus on being very efficient in getting your evidence in.
Understood, Your Honor.
So,
Your Honor, will staff be put on notice of any possible exhibits or witnesses that Mr. Cornejo may be bringing?
no, you will not. At this point, it's unclear whether Mr. Cornejo will have legal representation, and I'm not going to impose that obligation on him, particularly if there's any question about him being represented. So you've done this a lot. I'm sure you can handle things on the fly, Ms. Hayden.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Cornejo, let me just tell you briefly what's going to happen going forward. As you've heard, staff is going to file and serve on you witness and exhibit lists and the exhibits that they plan to try to get into evidence on November 13th. That will happen on October 14th. That's the deadline for them to do that. If you want legal representation, you should try to get it on board as quickly as possible to allow your attorney to get up to speed as quickly as possible on this. That's the only piece of advice, non-legal advice that I give to you. But let me just tell you what's going to happen at the hearing, particularly to the extent you cannot find legal representation. So the way these hearings work is I will typically give each side the opportunity to present an opening statement. which will just be a statement of what each side expects the hearing to show, what evidence will come in, and just what will happen at the end of the evidence as well. You can't make argument during your opening statement. It's just basically giving me a roadmap of how you expect the hearing to go. Now, in these cases, they're not all that complicated. Typically, opening statements are not necessary, but I will leave it up to both parties to decide whether they want to make an opening statement. Once any opening statements are made, staff bears the burden of proof in this proceeding, so they will get to go first in presenting their evidence. And that's known as a direct case. So staff will be able to present two primary forms of evidence. One is by testimony. Ms. Hayden has already indicated that they'll have at most two witnesses who will testify. That's one form of evidence. You'll be given the opportunity, or your attorney, to cross-examine those witnesses. I'll have an opportunity to ask any questions that I may have of the witnesses. And once I'm completed with any questions that I have, staff will be given the opportunity to conduct redirect, meaning questions regarding issues that either you asked about or that I asked about. Once they're done with redirect, the witness will be excused and we move on to the next witness. And the same process follows. The other form of evidence that they can attempt to get into evidence, and this applies to you as well, are exhibits, documents, in other words. They can try to lay a proper foundation and then ask for the admission of evidence of these exhibits into the evidentiary record. And then I get to decide whether they are admissible. Now, as to both these forms of evidence, testimony and exhibits, you or your attorney will have the opportunity to object to the admission of this evidence into the evidentiary record. But there has to be a sound legal basis for your objections. You can't object simply on the basis that you don't like the evidence. You have to have a good legal basis for any objection, and then I get to decide on the objection. Once staff has presented all of its evidence through its witnesses and its exhibits, it will rest its direct case. And then the case will switch to you, and you'll be able to put on your evidence, Mr. Cornejo. And again, same two forms of evidence apply. You can present testimony, and you can ask to have relevant exhibits admitted into the evidentiary record as well. As to the testimony, the same process that I just described as to staff applies to your case as well. Meaning you get to ask questions, or your attorney gets to ask questions of any witnesses. Staff will be given the opportunity to conduct cross-examination. I'll be allowed to ask questions, and then you or your attorney will be given the opportunity to conduct redirect examination, addressing only issues that were addressed on cross-examination or in my questions. So once you're done with your case, you will rest as well, and then staff will be given the opportunity to present a rebuttal case, which is focused exclusively on issues that you raised in your case that they want to present additional evidence on. So once staff is done with its rebuttal case, we will then talk and decide whether one or both sides want to present closing arguments or would prefer to file with the commission a written, effectively what is a written closing argument. We call them statements of position. So you have that choice, and we'll discuss it once all the evidence is in, what both of the parties want to do. And let me just reiterate, if you are not represented, I'm not going to be able to help you in any way. It's up to you to present your case and to lodge any appropriate objections to evidence that staff tries to get into the evidentiary record. I can't help you in any regard as to legal issues in particular. So, Mr. Cornejo, do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor, and I will try my hardest to have an attorney there with me to help me represent through this.
Okay. Okay. So that's all that I wanted to cover today. So does anybody have any issues or any questions for me? And I'll start with you, Ms. Hayden.
No, Your Honor, nothing for staff.
Okay. And Mr. Cornejo, do you have anything?
No, so there will be no hearing on October 14th. It's just her deadline to submit everything.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the hearing is on November 13th, starting at 9 a.m.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
And there will be, I'm going to issue an interim decision memorializing this. Mr. Cornejo, hopefully you have been receiving decisions. In this case, it appears that you have been since you appeared here today. But to the extent any of your contact information, email, or physical address is not up to date with the commission, please call the commission and have that information updated. But so we've been sending decisions and everything in this case to the email that you have on file with the commission. And I think there are 2 physical addresses as well where we've been sending information. So if any of that information is out of date, call the commission and get it updated. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, let me thank both of you, and we will be adjourned.
Thank you, sir. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Your Honor.
Thank you. You too.